I love that. What happened at the conference doesn't start with, well, the protesters did this that was unacceptable. Instead, it starts with, they don't really care that much about anti-Semitism in the far right, because the far right is anti-Semitic, but pro-Israel, so it's fine.
We were banned, I was banned.
I don't think that should be banned speech in Germany.
What I do not condemn is armed resistance to an apartheid system.
What was the music festival attack? What are you resisting against techno music, or the speech is totally fine if you cut out that part where he boxed himself into refusing to condemn Hamas?
Shame on you, comrades. Shame on you.
But yeah, there was a big pro-Palestine conference, and I actually don't know that much about it, so let's read about it. German police shut down pro-Palestine conference. Police in the German capital Berlin have stopped an event expressing solidarity with Palestinians amid the Gaza war. Authorities say they were concerned over potential anti-Semitic remarks and glorified violence. Now, I'll give a little bit of good faith here. I was speaking with a friend of mine who is Syrian and speaks fluent Arabic, and who is super, super pro-Palestinian here in Germany, here in Berlin. And she was telling me about how some of the pro-Palestine demonstrations in Berlin do make her a little bit uncomfortable. Like 90% of it is totally fine, like pro-peace, pro-human rights and all of that. But sometimes some of the speakers who are speaking Arabic and therefore are not being listened to, are not being understood by police, have rhetoric that makes her uncomfortable. Sometimes some of the songs that they play are like pro-jihad songs. And there is a little bit of wiggle room there. We can say, yeah, even some Arabic speakers, like pro-Palestine Arabic speakers, are like, this is dicey. I can understand why authorities would be concerned over the possibility of this happening, but just banning it altogether because sometimes a small percentage of them do this seems a bit weird. German police braced for spontaneous protest on Saturday after they shut down what was to have been that's a weird sentence, a 3-day conference of pro-Palestinian activists in the German capital. They said they feared that one of the speakers at the conference would repeat the kind of anti-Semitic remarks that he made in the past. Are they going to say what kind of anti-Semitic remarks this guy made? He was the author of a January essay that expressed understanding for the Hamas militants who carried out the deadly... Well, there are some pro-Israeli people in chat who understand the deadly October 7th attack. They just flip the logic backwards. What happened at the conference? I love that. What happened at the conference doesn't start with, well, the protesters or the people at the conference did this that was considered unacceptable. Instead, it starts with police temporarily switched off the power to the venue when Salman Abu Sita began speaking and later asked some 250 participants to leave the area just 2 hours into the event. So nothing happened at the conference other than police just blocking it entirely. And there was a bunch of statements by German officials saying, "Oh yeah, it's super good that we did this. We're standing up against anti-Semitism here," which is hilarious because there's actually cases of recently Jewish Force for Peace. Their bank account were closed by a German bank. The same bank has accounts by a far right organization. There's a university in Germany that canceled the guest professorship of a Jewish pro-Palestine professor. That same university has a professor on their payroll who spoke at the AfD far-right conference that made a huge splash a couple of months ago. Like, the double standard is unbelievable. They don't really care that much about anti-Semitism in the far right, because the far right is fine kind of sitting back and not, like, the far right is anti-Semitic, but pro-Israel, so it's fine. It's not anti-Semitic if it's pro-Israel, according to the German government. They're completely ignoring the growing far right movement in Germany and then claiming to be, like, fighting against anti-Semitism by doing this when literally nothing happened. Nothing bad happened here. They preemptively stopped the protest because maybe this guy who said that he could understand what happened on October 7th. And look, I possibly, like, I can make arguments similar to what I was saying about the Houthis. I think October 7th is way worse than what the Houthis are doing. I don't agree with the Houthis. I agree with October 7th even less. But I can still, if all you're saying is like, yeah, you know, situation is fucked up, I hate what happened, but I kind of understand where it's coming from, I don't understand how that can be considered anti-Semitic. Can you say Hamas is anti-Semitic? Yeah, you can say Hamas is anti-Semitic. You wouldn't. The people who say, no, Hamas is not anti-Semitic, they're just fighting against oppression, are at worst bad faith, at best giving Hamas way more good faith that they would get any other anti-Semitic organization. Like when far-right people, when the AfD, when neo-Nazis claim to not be anti-Semitic, they're just defending the white race or whatever, and you say, oh, no, that's not anti-Semitic. Like, you would never do that. But some people do defend Hamas saying that, and I do think that's dumb. They're like, oh, no, they're not anti-Semitic. They used to have super anti-Semitic stuff in their charters, but they changed the charters to be not explicitly anti-Semitic anymore, so we're going to assume that they're not anti-Semitic. Okay, that's stupid, and I've never defended Hamas. But just saying that you understand why they would carry out October 7th, even if you don't defend the actions that happened, is not anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitic and pro-Israel are not oxymoronic at all. Like, there's so many people who are like, the whole idea of Zionism to begin with in the late 1800s was anti-Semitic. It was non-Jews saying, hey, we don't want Jews here. We're going to support Jews leaving Europe to go make their own country so we don't have to deal with them anymore. That was a huge motivating factor in European Zionism in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And that is the same logic that is used by far-right groups in the West now. They're like, oh, we're super supportive of Israel. We don't want Jews to be in this country.
Hello, this is Yanis Varoufakis with a message for my friends in Germany.
Yanis Varoufakis, former finance minister of Greece, who's one of the most prominent leftist politicians in Europe, was supposed to be one of the speakers at this pro-Palestine event.
In particular, but not just in Germany. Do you know that the German Interior Ministry has just issued me with a ban? I've been banned from entering Germany. And indeed, if that were not enough, I've been banned from talking to you via Zoom, or indeed through a video message like this. The threat being that if I dare do it, exactly what I'm doing now, that I will be tried in Germany for breaking German law. Why? Because of a speech that I published yesterday on my blog.
My bad.
Calling for universal human rights in Israel-Palestine. A speech that I was banned from delivering in the Palestine Congress in Berlin, which the police, in its infinite wisdom, entered the venue and violently disbanded. So my question to my German friends, to Germans in general, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, doesn't matter. Once you have a look at that particular speech, take a moment to read it or to listen to the video on my blog post or on dm25.org. Is this in your name? Is it something that you feel comfortable happening in your democracy? From my perspective, this is essentially the death knell of the prospects of democracy in the Federal Republic of Germany. Look at the speech, read it.
Do you want to look at the speech?
Friends, congratulations and heartfelt thanks for being here, even though we were interrupted. Despite the threats, despite the police state, despite the panoply of the German press, despite the German political system that demonizes you for being here today. Why a Palestinian Congress, Mr. Varoufakis? A German journalist asked me recently. Because, as Hanan Ashrawi once said, we cannot rely on the silenced to tell us about their suffering. Today, Hanan Ashrawi's reason has grown depressingly stronger because we cannot rely on the silenced who are also massacred and starved to tell us about the massacres and the starvation. But there is another reason too. Because a decent people, the people of Germany, are being led down a perilous road to a heartless society by being made to associate themselves with another genocide carried out, again, in their name, with their complicity. I'm neither Jewish nor Palestinian, but I am incredibly proud to be here amongst Jews and Palestinians, to blend my voice for peace and universal human rights with Jewish voices for peace and universal human rights, with Palestinian voices for peace.
So let's try to take notes on some of the things that could have made this justifiably banned in Germany. So far, the only thing that I can think of is that he called it a genocide unequivocally and said that Germany was complicit. Did he say that Germany was complicit in genocide, or did I interpret that with his turn of phrase? I'm pretty sure he said that. I guess that's something that the German government wouldn't be too happy with.
And universal human
But I don't think that should be banned speech in Germany, that's for sure.
rights. Being together here today, even though we were so rudely interrupted by German police, being together here is proof that coexistence is not only possible, but that it is here already. Why not a Jewish Congress, Mr. Varoufakis? The same German journalist asked me, imagining that he was being smart. I welcomed his question. For if a single Jew is threatened anywhere, just because she or he is Jewish, I shall wear the Star of David on my lapel and offer my solidarity, whatever the cost, whatever it takes.
And they're saying that this is anti-Semitism. Yeah. Like making the clear distinction between Jews and Israel, criticizing Israel and saying, hey, full support for anyone, any Jew who is targeted for being Jewish. Obviously, especially when it's coming from someone who is extremely famous for being like a pro-human rights politician, has no history of anti-Semitism whatsoever, or even any kind of hateful positions whatsoever. But yeah, but people acknowledge the rise of anti-Semitic hate crimes. And that is absolutely something that is true and that's happening. And a bunch of Jewish activists are saying that is happening in part because Israel is claiming to do things in our name.
Let's be clear. If Jews were under attack anywhere in the world, I would be the first to canvass for a Jewish Congress in which to register our solidarity. But similarly, when Palestinians are massacred because they are Palestinians, under the dogma that to be dead and Palestinian must mean that you are Hamas, I shall wear my keffiyeh and offer my solidarity, whatever the cost, whatever it takes, to the people of Palestine. Universal human rights, folks, are either universal or they are nothing. With this in mind, I answered the journalist's question with a few questions of my own. Were 2 million Israeli Jews thrown out 80 years ago from their homes into an open-air prison and kept for those 80 years in that open-air prison without access to the outside world, with minimal food and water, no chance of a normal life, no opportunity to travel, and being bombed periodically for 80 years? No. Are Israeli Jews being starved intentionally by an army of occupation? Their children writhing on the floor, screaming from hunger? No. Are there thousands of Jewish injured children with no surviving parents crawling through the rubble as we speak, the rubble of what used to be their homes? No. Are Israeli Jews being bombed by the world's most sophisticated aeroplanes and bombs today? No. Are Israeli Jews experiencing complete ecocide of what little land they can still call their own? Not one tree left under which to seek shade, or whose fruit to taste? No. Are Israeli Jewish children being killed today, now, by snipers at the orders of a member state of the United Nations? No. Are Israeli Jews driven out of their homes by armed gangs today? No. Is Israel fighting for its existence today? No. If the answer to any of these questions had been yes, I would be participating in a Jewish Solidarity Congress today. Friends, today, we would have loved to have a decent, democratic, mutually respectful debate on how to bring peace about, on how to bring universal human rights for everyone, Jews and Palestinians, Bedouins and Christians, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, and to have this debate with people who think differently to us. We would have loved that. Sadly, as the German police just proven, and the whole of the German political system has been trying to do now for weeks to ban our conference, they did not allow this. Indeed, the whole of the political spectrum, from the CDU and CSU to the FDP, to the SPD, the Greens, and remarkably, to leaders of Die Linke in Berlin. Shame on you, comrades. Shame on you. They all joined forces to ensure that our civilized debate may be with them. A debate in which we may disagree agreeably never takes place in Berlin, never takes place in Germany. I say to them, you want to silence us, to ban us, to demonize us, to accuse us. You therefore leave us with no choice but to meet your ridiculous accusations with very logical, fair accusations of our own. You chose this, not us. You accuse us of anti-Semitic hatred. We accuse you of being the anti-Semite's best friend when you equate the right of Israel to commit war crimes with the right of Israeli Jews to defend themselves. You accuse us of supporting terrorism. We accuse you of equating legitimate resistance to an apartheid state with atrocities against civilians, which I have always and will always condemn, whomever commits them, Palestinians, Jewish settlers, my own family, whomever. We accuse you of not recognizing the duty of the people of Gaza to tear down the wall of the open prison in which they've been encased, confined for 80 years, and of equating this act.
Jem, I'm not familiar with the case of Martin Sellner. It might be a hot take. I would have to look into it some more. But so far, like, none of this. There's some like nuances, small details where I would maybe push back a tiny bit on what he's saying, but none of what he's saying is that unreasonable or hateful. Like, none of this sounds completely out of line. It's just like minor things that are maybe like, I would be like a slightly tiny bit more nuanced on this or that point. I don't understand how this can be considered to be anti-Semitic.
Of tearing down the wall of shame, which is no more defensible, remember, than the Berlin Wall was, with acts of terror. You accuse us of trivializing Hamas's October 7th attacks. We accuse you of trivializing the 80 years of Israel's ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and the erection of an unclad apartheid system across Israel and Palestine. We accuse you of trivializing Netanyahu's long-term support of Hamas, a support that Netanyahu has lent Hamas as a means of destroying the two-state solution that you claim to favor. We accuse you of trivializing the unprecedented terror unleashed by the Israeli army on the people of Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem. You accuse the organizers of today's Congress that we are, and I quote from your text, not interested in talking about possibilities for peaceful coexistence in the Middle East against the background of the war in Gaza. Are you serious? Have you lost your mind? We accuse you of supporting a German state that is, after the United States, the largest supplier of the weapons that the Netanyahu regime uses to massacre Palestinians as part of a grand plan to make a two-state solution and peaceful coexistence between Jews and Palestinians absolutely impossible. We accuse you of never answering the pertinent question that every German must answer. How much Palestinian blood must flow before your justified guilt over the Holocaust is washed away? So let's be clear. We are here in Berlin with our Palestinian Congress, which your police state has disrupted and banned. We are here, nevertheless, because unlike the German political system and the German state and the German media,
he basically made the same point as Owen Jones made of Germany making Palestinians pay for their own World War II guilt, which I can understand why German officials would be upset at that. Maybe this is my very very American pro-free speech thing, but I don't think that's even super harsh criticism of the German government shouldn't be something that is illegal in a democratic country. Because I don't think this is that unreasonable of a criticism. And this is a criticism that is levied by Germans at their own government as well. And it's a criticism that is being tried, like the whole Germany being complicit in the alleged Israeli genocide is being tried at the ACJ right now. Is it Nicaragua who accused Germany of that? Who filed a case against Germany about that? I don't have a strong position on whether that case in a court of law has merit, but to levy that criticism in a political speech, I don't think is something that should be worthy of being banned from the country in a democratic country. That seems crazy to me.
We condemn genocide and war crimes regardless of who is perpetrating them. Just as we opposed apartheid in the American South or in South Africa, we oppose apartheid in the land of Israel, Palestine, no matter who has the upper hand. Because we stand for universal human rights, freedom and equality among Jews, Palestinians, Bedouins, and Christians in the ancient land of Palestine. And so that we're even clearer on the questions that journalists or politicians put to us, legitimate or malignant. Let me be clear. Do I condemn Hamas's atrocities? I condemn every single atrocity, whomever is the perpetrator or the victim. What I do not condemn, and I will never condemn.
I don't like this. I hate these, like he's doing it to himself. Usually when you have people who are kind of like justifying October 7th and someone says, do you condemn Hamas? And they'll kind of talk around it and said, I condemn all acts of aggression, all violence, blah, blah, blah. But they won't specifically said, yeah, I do condemn October 7th. But usually that's a two-person thing where one person tries to box that other person into condemning Hamas and they talk their way around condemning Hamas. He's doing it to himself in this case. That's a little embarrassing, honestly. You could argue that, well, by saying that he does condemn October 7th, but it's a bit weird that he would ask himself the question and then avoid saying it is a bit weird. Exactly, that's an all lives matter sort of thing. It feels kind of messed up to me. Like it feels kind of a self-own to me.
Is armed resistance to an apartheid system designed as part of a slow-burning but inexorable ethnic cleansing program. Put differently, I condemn every attack on whomever is the perpetrator or the victim. What I do not condemn, and I will never condemn, is armed resistance to an apartheid system designed as part of a slow-burning but inexorable ethnic cleansing program.
Look, if October 7th had only gone after either military targets, government targets, infrastructure to inflict like economic or other kinds of logistical pain or pressure on Israel to try to force them to change their position, or even stuff like boycotts, I can't understand the people who pretend like BDS is this horrible movement when boycotts are part of what put pressure on South Africa to end their apartheid. Now, boycotts are not on their own not that effective, and I think BDS can be pretty cringe, especially like the worst part is like BDS supporters who are saying stuff like, oh, boycott Starbucks, even though Starbucks isn't on any of the BDS lists, but it's like these movements kind of completely lose control, like the BDS organization kind of completely loses control of what people are saying online, and they end up doing stupid boycotts against Starbucks, even though Starbucks doesn't have any shops in Israel and isn't on the boycott list by BDS. But at the same time, like that is clearly a non-violent organization that is not targeting like civilians or anything like that. Now, what he said,
or politicians put to us, legitimate or malignant, hand. Because we stand, we're even clearer on the questions that journalists or politicians ask. Whomever is the perpetrator of atrocities, I condemn every single atrocity. Whomever is the perpetrator or the victim. What I do not condemn, and I will never condemn, is armed resistance to an apartheid system designed as part of a slow-burning but inexorable ethnic cleansing program. Put differently, I condemn every attack on civilians, while at the same time, I celebrate anyone who risks their life to tear down the wall of shame.
Yeah, but the problem with October 7th is that it did attack civilians massively. What was the music festival attack? What are you resisting against techno music, or?
I condemn every attack on civilians.
Okay, well, debate over, I guess. Like, point closed. Then you shouldn't have much of a problem to not talk your way around condemning October 7th.
While at the same time, I celebrate anyone who risks their life to tear down the wall of shame. Is Israel not engaged in a war for its very existence, as some say? No, it is not. Israel is a nuclear-armed state with perhaps the most technologically advanced army in the world, and the panoply of the United States military machine having its back. There is no symmetry with Hamas. Hamas is a group which can cause, and has caused, serious damage to Israelis, but which has no capacity whatsoever to defeat Israel's military, or even to prevent Israel from continuing to implement the slow genocide, not so slow these days, of Palestinians, under the system of apartheid that has been erected with long-standing American, German, and European Union support. Are Israelis not justified to fear that Hamas wants to exterminate them? Of course they are. Jews have suffered a...
You can make the argument that a ragtag group of militia who are barely able to get any weapons into the Gaza Strip just aren't equipped to attack military targets. But that doesn't justify attacking a music festival full of civilians. Obviously, that should be obvious.
A Holocaust that was preceded with pogroms and a deep-seated anti-Semitism permeating the whole of Europe and the Americas for centuries. It is only natural that Israelis live in fear of a new pogrom if the Israeli army falls. I understand that. That's perfectly understandable. However, by imposing apartheid on their Palestinian neighbors,
this is the point that
by treating them like Untermenschen, a new pogrom, if the Israeli armies.
Like, this is the point where I'm saying, okay, this is kind of a reasonable position that I can see from Israeli people. Like, yeah, if the Israeli army falls, I can completely, or if the Israeli army is like unable to, obviously Israel should have an army, should have the means to defend its citizens.
And a deep-seated anti-Semitism permeating the whole of Europe and the Americas for centuries. It is only natural that Israelis live in fear of a new pogrom if the Israeli army falls. I understand that. That's perfectly understandable. However, by imposing apartheid on their Palestinian neighbors, by treating them like Untermenschen, subhumans, the Israeli state is stoking the fires of anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
It is strengthening those Palestinians and Israelis who want just to annihilate each other. And in the end, apartheid contributes to the awful insecurity consuming Jews in Israel and the diaspora. To put it bluntly, apartheid against Palestinians is the Israelis' worst self-defense. What about anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism is always a clear and present danger. A danger that must be eradicated, especially amongst the ranks of the global left and the Palestinians fighting for Palestinian civil liberties, everywhere. Others ask, why don't Palestinians pursue their objectives by peaceful means? They did. The PLO recognized Israel, even though Israel never recognized Palestine. And the PLO famously renounced armed struggle. And what did they get for it? Absolute humiliation and systematic ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. It's going on as we speak. That is what nurtured Hamas and elevated Hamas in the eyes of many Palestinians, as the only alternative to the genocide of the Palestinian people under Israel's apartheid. What should be done now? What might bring peace to Israel-Palestine? First, an immediate, unconditional ceasefire. Second, the release of all hostages, Hamas's hostages and the thousands of hostages held by Israel. That must be the first step towards a peace process under the auspices of the United Nations, supported by a commitment by the international community, to end apartheid and to safeguard equal civil liberties and equal political rights for everyone, for all. What should replace Israeli apartheid? Well, that must be left to Israelis and Palestinians to decide between the two-state solution and the solution of a single federal secular state. But under the condition that the international community has made it clear to everyone that there will be equal political rights and equal civil liberties from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Friends, in the final analysis, we are here because vengeance is a lazy form of grief. We are here to promote not vengeance, but peace and coexistence across Israel-Palestine. We are here to tell German Democrats, including our former comrades of Die Linke, who have been a great disappointment, that they have covered themselves in shame long enough, that two wrongs do not one right make, that allowing Israel to get away with the war crimes is not going to ameliorate the legacy of Germany's crimes against the Jewish people. Beyond today's Congress, we have a duty, in Germany in particular, to change the conversation. We have a duty to persuade the vast majority of decent Germans out there that universal human rights is what matters. That never again means never again for anyone, Jew, Palestinian, Ukrainian, Russian, Yemeni, Sudanese, Rwandan, for everyone, everywhere. In this context, I am pleased to announce that DiEM25's German political party, Mera25, will be on the ballot paper in the European Parliament elections this coming June in Germany. Mera25 Germany will be seeking the vote of German humanists who crave at least one member of European Parliament representing Germany and calling out the European Union's complicity in genocide, a complicity that is Europe's greatest gift to the anti-Semites in Europe and beyond. I salute you all, and I suggest that we never forget that none of us is free if one of us is in chains.
That's it. There's 10 seconds left, but that's a good point to end on. Look, I don't fully agree with every single word of that speech. I agree with most of it. I think there were some parts that were kind of clumsy and kind of pandering to the Hamas apologists, I guess, or October 7th apologists. Yeah, I do agree that there was a little bit too much equivocation. I would say that the speech is totally fine, in my opinion, if you cut out that part where he boxed himself into refusing to condemn Hamas. Like, I'm not even saying that he should have explicitly condemned Hamas. I'm fine with him talking around him, but he did a complete own goal by asking himself the question and then doing the talking around it, where he could have just said, like, he could have just avoided that part entirely and made all of the other completely justified points, and that would have been a completely fine speech. Now, do I think that the part where he was kind of like talking around like, oh, I condemn all forms of violence against civilians and all of that, do I think that rises to the level where he should be banned from speaking in Germany? No, I don't. I don't think that section was good of his speech, but I don't think it merits being banned from Germany. Now, to be clear, he claims he was banned from Germany and banned from speaking on Zoom in Germany. Last I saw of the reporting on this, they had asked German officials and they declined to comment, which is kind of a non-confirmation that it seems like that was actually the measure taken. But it could entirely be that they just declined to comment, but it's not as simple as that he would ban from Germany. I don't have good sources confirming for sure that what he's saying on being banned was correct, but it seems to be the case. Either way, yeah, I don't think this merits, as much as there are parts of the speech that I do find questionable, there is a big difference between questionable and, oh, this is hateful and anti-Semitic and whatever, when so much of it is clearly making the distinction between Jews and Israel, between targeting Israeli institutions versus targeting civilians. There was some equivocation that made me uncomfortable, but honestly, not that much. Don't forget to like and follow. This was a clip from the weekly Barely Informed live stream. You can catch it every Sunday on the main Barely Informed YouTube channel, and please support us on Patreon. The link for both of those are down below.